Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining. Today we have a presentation by Arnold Leitner, the founder and CEO of YouSolar, which creates the PowerBloc, a solar nanogrid that delivers reliable and clean power to the home. And just before we start, we have one housekeeping item that we will be having a Q&A session at the end. So if you do have any questions, please feel free to ask them in the Q&A box at the bottom of your screens. Thank you, and I'll pass it on to Arnold.
Good morning. My name is Arnold Leitner, and I'm the CEO of YouSolar. Today, I'd like to take you on a journey to places where utility power is optional. And to get started, allow me to introduce a few things about the PowerBloc. It is a multi-source nanogrid that delivers resilient and clean power. What we do with the PowerBloc is we make utility power optional. That doesn't always mean we replace it. Often we supplement it. Sometimes we work in parallel, or in certain cases, we also take the customer entirely off-grid, or a customer chooses to be off-grid. But this option is being used by our customers in many different and very creative ways, and sometimes for very important reasons. So let's just remind ourselves what the PowerBloc is. It's a high voltage direct current nanogrid. And that will become important in one of the cases I show you, because it allows us to solve a problem that otherwise would be difficult or impossible to solve for another product. We're multi-source. In this case, in all cases, you see that two of our customers are blending in generator power because one is off-grid and the other one needs extreme redundancy for wildfire protection. We are primary power. So you'll see that none of our customers require utility approval because we are the grid forming system to the house. The range of systems that we deliver are 24 to 240 kilowatt, 70 to 700 kilowatt hours. That's for single phase. We do even more power for three phase. And we have an example in this presentation today. I'll just point out that currently the systems we're selling are all in the 200 to 400 amp range, so about 24 to 800 kilowatt. We deliver alternating current or direct current. Most of our customers right now are using just AC, but they're all ready for the DC-DC car chargers. And we work with or without the grid. So that's a very nice thing. So that's an optionality here as well for the customer. So we make utility optional. We do large homes, but we're now also moving into commercial applications. And as you see, some of our homes are kind of in between already. We do all kinds of AC. We do single phase and three phase, and we do them even from the same system, which one of our customer takes advantage of. And again, we require no utility approval because we are not grid tight. We actually no different, if you like, to a home-wide uninterruptible power supply. We're behind the meter. And very exciting, we are ready for bidirectional DC EV charging. That is only waiting for the charger from one of the vendors, but the PowerBloc is ready. That allows you to fast charge your vehicle at home, also cut out a lot of equipment, increase efficiency, lower cost of the overall system installation, and extend the range of your PowerBloc using your vehicle. And so you don't have to design your PowerBloc for the absolute worst case. You can have your vehicle as an option to integrate seamlessly, like all other power sources, into the PowerBloc. So our differentiation, as I noted earlier, you'll see it here in a moment, become important, is the high voltage direct current that we operate at. There's also a DC-DC microconverter involved that we typically don't highlight in these presentations. They're panel level electronics that sit behind each solar panel, and they're very helpful, and it's a unique differentiator, and it starts the nanogrid on the roof. But what most of you will see is the red cabinets on the right-hand side. That's what most people think of the PowerBloc, although we make the microconverter in our picture part of it. This is the modular plug-and-play shelf-mounted, rack-based PowerBloc that is a big success with our customers. It's highly efficient, and it's very easy to scale and equally easily to assemble, which I'll show you later. And it can be hand installed. So even though you might be building a system with hundreds of kilowatt hours of storage, it doesn't require any special equipment, lift cranes, or some kind of a special jack. This can, in all principally, all be hand installed and is hand installed by our team. We use, of course, dollies to move equipment around. So what's unique about the PowerBloc, that is not true for any other system that we have looked at. Often you hear that they integrate generators, and it's not true. What they mean is they switch over to the generator, and then the solar system sits and waits until the generator is done. That's hardly integration. That's definitely not seamless blending. But what's unique about the PowerBloc is that indeed we blend all source of energy completely seamless on this high voltage direct current bus. And which source we take and to which amounts is determined by the power electronics that interconnects all these sources. So we can completely control how much comes from each source into the high voltage direct current core. We call it the bus, and that delivers the power then to the inverter or inverters, or even different type of inverters. And therefore, there are no switches or no glitches when it comes to blending and integrating all these different power sources, including beginning next year, PowerBloc is ready. Next year, the electric vehicle. So why do people buy the PowerBloc? And you will see it in a moment with the 3 customers we're looking at. Believe it or not, surprisingly, but the most important reason customers buy the PowerBloc is to avoid costly utility upgrades. So that's in one case, in one case to increase the capacity from say 100 to 200 amps, or from 200 to 400. And in many cases, it's also simply better to connect at all, because until recently, you would simply pay what it costs to connect. Otherwise, you wouldn't have a home or business. Now you have a choice. You also have a choice to determine how much connection you actually need, if you need new connection in the first place. Now, naturally, with a PowerBloc, with a storage system, you have outage protection. For the PowerBloc, this is especially true for long durations, because we can integrate a generator, we can integrate your vehicle. So the PowerBloc is not just there for a few hours, which is typical for home battery systems. It can carry outage for 5 days, indefinite, if you like, especially if the solar array is properly sized. One of our customers you see today has a PowerBloc primarily for wildfire suppression. It's a very valuable home. It's very exposed, almost impossible to protect in a wildfire, so the home needs to protect itself. And the PowerBloc is there to provide the utmost redundancy and support and supply to the control and pumping system. And lastly, since all of customers have a battery and the PowerBloc is smart enough, they all engage in energy price arbitrage, not drawing from the grid when prices are high, but using its own solar or stored electricity when prices are high. Apologize, I misspoke. Don't use the grid when prices are high, and use solar battery during those times. Yeah, so those are the 4 reasons. And now with this, let's see who our customers are. The customers you will see today are really all high-end homes, but they're also mixed commercial. Recent sales here on this chart are in the range from like $150,000 to $350,000. This is only the PowerBloc. This does not include the solar array, except for the PowerBloc solar panel electronics called the step microconverter. But these are significant systems, and some of these installations are more a commercial establishment than just a house that you and I live in. We're shipping the 3rd generation PowerBloc now. The first one has begun pre-installation, and we have a $2 million order book just on these projects, and it's growing quickly. We expect to sign a lot more projects even before the end of this year. Our next market, and really logical extension of the PowerBloc, is the commercial market. Because of the size of the PowerBloc, the scalability we talked about earlier, it goes from 24 kilowatt to 240 kilowatt, 700 to 700 kilowatt hours of storage. It can integrate easily 50 or 100 kilowatts of solar. So it's really in that small commercial space. So we're working with the first resort for a PowerBloc. We also have a PowerBloc ready for the military. We have made first contacts there. We have a project already with the clinic. We believe the PowerBloc will be very valuable for cooling centers all around the country, especially, of course, in the south, desert southwest, and the southeast. We also have the first project for a public building and one for a maintenance yard, which I believe is signing this month. So there we are. We're moving into commercial projects. And now today I would like to show you 3 customers and how we solve their energy expectations. Before I go there, let me just share quickly our design process. We have various tools. We do a very good job in accurately forecasting solar production using PV watts or Aurora. Then we build a load model, either existing data, but more than often we use proxy data from other homes that are similar, or we even create load forecasts using a bottom-up model where we look at every appliance, look at how long it will run, how long it will run over the season, in a day, at what load factors, and we build up a load forecast on a monthly basis, and then we translate that into an hourly and even 15-minute model. We provide single line diagrams. As you will see, we act almost as the electrical engineer. And then we have a performance model. It's an annual model. It is very realistic because it uses variable solar and load. So, on average, everything is simple to use. When you allow the variability, things get much more tricky. It has 35,000 annual time steps, over 5 million calculations, and it's extremely accurate and sophisticated. It lets us really show to customers how systems perform. And we use it often to educate our customers between how much storage and how much solar they should get. Because if I may want to leave this with you, you cannot store yourself out of an outage. Ultimately, you need to replenish with solar. And we have a case with a maintenance yard where the maintenance yard will use 5 times less generator power if they go for 40 kilowatt solar and 200 kilowatt hour storage than for 10 kilowatt solar and 400 kilowatt hours of energy storage. So some of these things are counterintuitive, and the performance model shows the right solution. We provide single line diagrams. We basically do the electrical engineering, not of course the lighting and all these details, but everything up to the panel. The load panel we provide from solar to the power block, generator, utility, how everything integrates. Here in the background, you see a single line diagram I will be referring to later at our customers that has a triple redundant power system for wildfire suppression. And then the performance model I mentioned earlier, this is the output you get, everything in detail, including actual losses, actual performance. It's very realistic and it's extremely accurate in its predictability. So let's go to our first use case, a wonderful home in Big Sur where condors fly, and I mean this literally. We had condors fly over the property when we were inspecting the location to find places to fit the power block and the solar array. This home is, as I noted, on the Big Sur coast. It was designed by Mickey Munich, I believe it pronounced. He also designed the Post Ranch Inn. This property is on a cliffside. You can see on the right-hand side, just a retaining wall beyond which one everything drops off. I have a more spectacular photo later. Has various narrow access on a small single road, so there's no egress out of there during a fire or even access to it. Therefore, the home has now a wildfire suppression system, and it required reliable water supply, and so it has buried 18,000-gallon water tanks, which the power block is charged with to deliver over the property and protect the home during a wildfire. It currently has unreliable power, like many in the Big Sur area. We just checked yesterday. We were down in Big Sur, and we learned that about 3 to 4 weeks in total aggregate in a year, people do not have power in the Big Sur area. So also the current 200 ampere service that's there is insufficient for the new home, which has more electric appliances, EV charging, and of course this wildfire suppression system. So the challenges here were very limited space for the power block and for the array. We had to adapt to constantly changing water pumping requirements. That is not because the owner is not clear what they want. It's because the type of solutions for wildfire suppression are only emerging, and the right vendor sometimes is hard to find. And so everyone gives you different specs. We came along the way, and so we had to continually adapt to what was required. We went from, 150 amp pumps to 3-phase pumps and back to single-phase pumps, but now everything is taken care of. but the PowerBloc would have been able to deliver any pumping requirement. We have triple redundancy. I'll show that later. For the system, it cannot fail. We have challenges with winter solar energy production. I'll show that later, which will be representative to all of our projects down there. And we need 300 ampere. We need to fit it, and we need large storage to make it through the wildfire season and any kind of contingencies. So the first solution for space was to split up the PowerBloc into 2 locations, and also to change the size of the cabinet. So because the PowerBloc is modular and connected through a 400-volt energy bus, we can put things in separate locations. We can separate some of the storage from the rest of the PowerBloc, and that's what we did. In this case, only 25 yards away. We have another house that I'm not showing today where the storage and the power cabinets are separated by 150 yards. And that all would be completely impossible with the current 50-volt systems that are on the market. That's only possible at the high electric potential of 400 volt, where losses are about 60 times lower than over commensurate wire than 50 volt. So we have now 300 amps at the house. They come with 90 kilowatt hours of energy storage, and then we located the 80 kilowatt hours away from the house in a cabin, a shed. I don't like the term shed, but it's what it is. And also, there are code requirements in Big Sur for outside buildings that are not the primary home. So we had to keep it below a certain height limit that's required at creating custom cabinets. And that was possible. And you can see on the right-hand side, you see this kind of segmentation that seems to be like a duplication of the PowerBloc components above and below. And so we don't have to have them all above each other. We can put them side by side. So we made cabinets that were side by side using these 2 blocks that you see here. And ultimately, that resulted, instead of 2 energy storage cabinets that are separate from the house, it resulted in 4, but now they're low and not visible. So we created a shed. This is not the one that we're doing there, because remember, we cut the PowerBloc size in half, but that's kind of what we do. It's a very well aerated light shed that comes apart. We protect it from, grasses and pollen flying into it, but this is kind of standard. And we find a lot of customers that, because today these systems are not designed into the architecture, have to resort to these outside cabinets somewhere away from the house on the property. Usually we don't have a problem finding a space. Also actually quite pretty. They look like a nice little wooden shed, and they can be anywhere. And that's again only possible because of a high voltage direct current architecture. Otherwise, you just couldn't do this. Things would have to be close to the load panel. So we use that shed now in 2 or 3 projects, and it works very well. So getting back to triple redundancy, on the right-hand side, you see these green pipes. That's the fill, I believe, or the takeout of the wildfire suppression system. There's some 8 tanks or so that were buried here. And so it required a triple redundancy. The primary power, of course, of the house is the PowerBloc, but if it were to service or not work, then utility power would come in. If utility power wasn't coming in and the PowerBloc wasn't there, then the generator that also feeds the PowerBloc would then transfer over and then drive these pumps. But remember that in all of this, there has to be also an uninterruptible power supply for the controls. So that needs to run for days. So its UPS only lasts for hours. So we kind of backed up that UPS with this switching and system that makes sure that any of those 3 sources will always provide power to the UPS, which in turn keeps the controls completely uninterrupted. That was the single line diagram I showed you earlier. Now, the next problem we have, but with being an option to utility power, is to really meet most of the load or all of the load from solar. The challenge we have in our latitude, in our climate, first our latitude, doesn't matter where you are along about the 35th parallel, is that the irradiance peaks in the summer and falls off significantly in the fall. And I'll show you in a moment what that means for the solar array and for the tilt of the solar array, respective to that solar trajectory. But the other thing is that we have relatively high heating loads in the winter. We don't really have that kind of summer peak like you find in the valley or in Southern California. and then, but which would match solar production. Instead, we have, actually a load peaking in the winter. So how can you get close to that? How can you match that with the solar array? And I want to point out that this is for Big Sur, for the climate zone, and we have some experience with homes in that area. But every time we do a home that's new and doesn't have any consumption data, or consumption data is not meaningful because too many changes occurred, we build these load proxies. So here, this might take you a moment to look at, are the solar productions by panel tilt for south-facing array for the Big Sur coast. What you see at number 1 is the classic flat roof solar array, that bluish line. And you see that, and don't look at the percentage on the left, that's the percentage of solar production over the year per month for any of those arrays. But you can see it peaks in June, which you expect, and it falls off dramatically. And just by eyeballing it, you can see that in the summer, it's 1 twice of that in the winter. Well, that wouldn't help with the type of loads we look at. If you look at number 2, which is an array tilted at 50 degree, relatively steep, you can see that you flatten out the curve. Now you're giving up some production in the summer, but bear in mind, you don't need it during that time period. Instead, you're lifting the sides, the winter and the spring and fall legs up, and you're getting closer to what you're looking for. Now, often a 50-degree positioned array is structurally difficult and architecturally difficult to integrate. So you'll see here that our customer opted for a 90-degree array, which produces very little in the summer. It's almost inverted to the degree at the array at 5 degree, which is a flat roof with a bit of runoff angle. But if you combine that with a array that's flat, number 1, you cannot get another hybrid again. You cannot get back to number 2. I think you can probably see that. So if you have the right ratio between horizontal and vertical arrays, you can kind of replicate that kind of red, almost ideal solar production. So what we did is at this customer site, there's a large retaining wall on this massive drop off, 950 feet to the ocean. We have no shading issues here. I think that's pretty clear. And so we will be mounting solar panels vertical on this wall, and right inside you just see a test. And then we combine that with a flat array that sits on the garage. So the result of that is that we are pretty well matching the consumption. That's that red bar with the solar production. There isn't more solar on the site. Otherwise, we simply would oversize and kind of capture more of the load. So the rest comes from the utility. And if the utility were out, it would come from the generator. We did what we could. It's a very small site, and we wanted to make it in a way that we preserve the beauty of that site, which is absolutely spectacular. And of course, the coast of Big Sur. And I think we did a fantastic job. I think that array on the wall just looks stunning. All right, so let's look at the specifications. So we have 72 kilowatt hour of split phase. That's 300 amp. We can surge up to 390 ampere for 10 seconds. So we have no concerns whatsoever for this home. It has 170 kilowatt hours of storage, of which 80 are away from the house. We have 3 solar arrays, total of 21 kilowatt. We couldn't do more. There's just not more space. We're integrating 18 kilowatt of solar. We're also integrating 18 kilowatt of generator power. And there is no utility approval required for this project. And it would take years, probably for any of the engineering team at PG&E to work this through, just to realize that there's nothing to work through, but that's not how to operate. Regardless, we don't need utility approval because we're behind the meter. All right, let me check the halfway point. So yes, let's go to another project that we love, which is in Woodland Valley. It's a vineyard powered by the sun. We just began pre-installation at that vineyard. It has unreliable power, as most in the Northern California area, and it can lose power during the critical time of the wine harvest when water for the pumps is required. And so we added a power block. The customer added a power block, and there's also a barn that needs to be powered, and a ADU, an auxiliary dwelling unit. So This is the array on the barn, a newly built barn, absolutely gorgeous. The most beautiful barn I've ever seen, and I grew up on a farm, so I do know what barns look like usually. It's a picture-perfect array. What I love about this array is like we have a relatively steep, I guess like a 35-degree angle for the lower half, flat on the top, not ideal, we like it a little steeper, but this is about as good as it gets. So this is great. There's another array that will be on the ADU, but that's not built yet. So here's the PowerBloc during installation. Marcus, our mechanical engineer, is showing how this PowerBloc comes together, and I'll show you a short GIF here in a moment. But after these pieces, after the brackets, apologize, on the right-hand side, if you see at the bottom, have been mounted to the floor, the cabinet simply installs like an IKEA type of furniture, except that all the holes here are drilled in the right location, and there's no Swedish instructions that come with it. All plain English, so you just put the cabinets together, and here they are ready to be loaded with the power electronics and the batteries. Here's a GIF that shows you how the PowerBloc comes together. You just put the bases down, side panels, back panel, the vent hood, very important. We make sure we've got enough aeration. You insert the modules, you connect them with click lock connectors for the front, then you screw down your modules, and you're done. And you only need a Phillips head and a M6 hex wrench to assemble the entire PowerBloc. No more tools required. Everything is click lock. That is even true for a PowerBloc this size. So in other words, size does not matter for PowerBloc installation. And this is a system we actually have already sold. It's not one of our use cases today, but maybe for some other webinar. So even this PowerBloc you see here is assembled by an M6 Allen wrench and one Phillips screwdriver, which is why our installers and our partners love the PowerBloc. So specifications here, we have 24 kilowatt, 100 amps, up to I mistyped here, 130 amps for 10 seconds, 110 kilowatt hours of storage, 3 arrays ultimately with the additional array down by the ADU for 37 kilowatt, excellent. I really love that. That's the right amount of solar, and 12 kilowatt of utility integration. And again, utility approval is not required. This is behind the meter on the property. I think you see his theme here with utility approval. So here's live and work as, and I cannot pronounce this for the world of it. I tried all morning. Dionysus, English pronunciation, the god of wine and pleasure. This is couldn't be a better name for this building. This is a mixed residential, mixed winery. So the customer lives on the left, 40% left side, the third, and then has a winery on the right-hand side for winemaking. Gorgeous property, beautiful design. So it's a private residence in Carmel Valley with the winemaking, large electric load. Would have to pay PG&E over $500,000 for new service with unknown timeline. And so the customer decided to go off grid. We have the roof and plenty of ground available for the solar array, and we took advantage of it. So the private residence requires 12240 volt, but the winemaking requires 240 volt 3-phase. And we had to match the load with solar. We had roofs that were not ideal for solar orientation. That's the least. That's not as beautiful as early in Woodland Valley, but the views are spectacular. So I know why they put the house the way they did. Winemaking is in the fall when the sun starts to, not shine as strongly anymore. And we need a redundancy because we're absolutely off grid, and there's winemaking that needs to be processed, chilling of wines. All these things cannot be interrupted. So we had to have real redundancy. So what did we do? On the rooftop, we put solar on, of course, and then we added a ground mount solar array, which I describe in a moment. It's pretty creative. And then we deliver from the same PowerBloc. You see in a moment, 12240 and 240 3-phase. We have asked the owner for dual generators. So we have 2 generators that can either by themselves or together add energy to the PowerBloc when we are not having enough sunshine. And we also made sure that we had a critical loads panel where the generator can also meet directly the critical load. So that required to make the generator much bigger than we typically do. But now we have redundancy there in case the PowerBloc needs to be serviced, otherwise because we don't have any power that moment. So the solution was to go 2 phases. On the right-hand side, those 4 cabinets are the current 12240 volt service to the home. On the left side will be the expansion. That depends a bit on the permit that the customer still awaits, but that will be additional storage, and then we'll have a 240 volt three-phase 40 kilowatt supply, 40 kilowatt for the winemaking. The property will probably need additional storage, the way I look at this, but most importantly, it will need even more solar once we do this expansion, and that is already planned for. So fortunately, we have a hillside here that begins with a 30% slope, that's 17 degrees. We want solar panels at 6 degrees to the horizon here. So what we did is we spaced them on the existing 70-degree at a lower angle so that the sum of the two gets us close to the 60 degrees. And we used YouSolar spot irradiance model to calculate the best row spacing so that we get the array as compact as possible on that hillside, or the section of the hillside, I should say, and minimize shading to maximize solar production. So we do that as well. We don't install solar arrays. We don't even know how to do it. Well, we do actually, but we don't do that business, but we design it. We designed it even detail regarding row to row spacing and layout and how many panels and what orientations. Like earlier, I showed in Big Sur how we mixed and matched two solar arrays to mimic the ideal solar array, which would be a 50-degree array that we couldn't actually build on site. So specifications of this power block: 48 kilowatts of AC power, 200 amps to the house, and then 40 kilowatt, this is 100 amp expansion for the winemaking. Storage, again, right now 140 kilowatt hours, another 70 kilowatt hours with the expansion. And it currently has 3 arrays already with 35 kilowatt, most of it being much of it being on the ground. But we apologize, not kilowatt hours. We're looking at a 20 kilowatt expansion at least to cover the winemaking. And we have a generator integration at 12 kilowatt that can switch between the two generators so that both of them or one of them can connect to it. And utility approval, in this case, not applicable because the customer decided well, they spent a lot less money on the power block. They would have simply paid on the connection to PG&E. They got free energy for the most part. They got redundancy. They got single phase and 3-phase service, actually all they needed. So this was a great solution for that customer. So this was the summary today of 3 of our customer projects. I hope you enjoyed it. We have a lot more. There are a lot more interesting projects to come or to cover. But all of those have one thing in common. They have a YouSolar nanogrid that solves the energy challenges and often just doesn't become a challenge at all anymore. We just give them what they want, and the power block in almost all cases can do what they need. What's unique about the power block is these parallel modules, both in the cabinet and on the array, that allow us to really lay out everything just to meet the space requirements and the performance requirements of a customer with really no constraints on what we need to do for the customers. And you saw it earlier when I mentioned that we were splitting the cabinet in 2 and separating it out and putting that all in property nicely integrated. So that's all possible through the high voltage architecture and the modularity, all of which is based on this parallel architecture. It's very scalable. This is the largest power block we've sold to date, and it's no longer. We already have another one come in that has 12 cabinets that we have proposed. This is 8 for 400 ampere service. We are multi-source, as I mentioned earlier, and this is truly multi-source. There are no compromises, no switches, no glitches, no footnotes. Integrate as much solar as you want. You want 150 kilowatt of solar, you got it. You want 5 generators and 1 3-phase, you got it. Do whatever you want. It's a parallel architecture, and it can take anything. There are some limits in the size of the cabling. At some point we need to slow you down, but the current power block, as we have designed, can pretty much meet all of the small commercial and residential ideas and the expectations you have of the power block. We do on or off grid. We don't do grid tight yet. We avoid it because we take the utility out of the picture. But if you have a grid tight situation that really merits that, the power block is not specific to being grid forming, which is the same as being off grid or on grid. We mean by that it uses energy from the grid, but it's not tied to the grid. It's just a load on the grid, no different than any appliance in the house you connect to your load panel. It's easy to install and easy to service. We expect to offer an uptime guarantee for Northern California that will soon extend to all of California. That will be will meet and exceed any uptime guarantee the utility doesn't offer. So you're back up and running if anything is not working. And that's partly possible because of the modularity and ease of serviceability of the PowerBloc. So the PowerBlocs are, needlessly to say, fully automated. You don't have to do anything. The generators will start all by themselves at the right time. You can tell them when not to start. We provide a weather forecast to optimize storage and maximize your solar energy production. So if you want the PowerBloc, order it now. We're getting pretty full for next year. We're still a small team. We're ramping up manufacturing, but if you want a PowerBloc for next year, please start getting in touch with us quickly. If you want the tax credit before the administration changes, move even faster. Although I think that tax credit will survive for some time, but you never know. It's very significant, 30%. It's extremely significant commercial, where it's another 40% of modified accelerated depreciation. So the team, myself, I'm Arnold Leitner. Roger Peng is our sales director, has sold over 250 batteries. Bob Rudder is our CTO. And Mike Allman is the man who built the first utility solar power plant in the desert Southwest, which is how we met. And he's one of our main investors, original investors, and one of our board members. I would like to mention that we have raised over $1.5 million in our recent financing on Start Engine, which closes tomorrow. So if you want to invest in YouSolar, not just buy PowerBloc, if you also want to invest in YouSolar, by the way, you do get a discount if you invest in YouSolar on a PowerBloc. Maybe that will entice you further. Please go to Start Engine, startengine.com/YouSolar. The campaign is open. That's what these are called, these raises, until tomorrow, midnight Pacific time. So with this, thank you for your time, and hopefully you learned something. We have a lot more projects to cover. There are many more details I would enjoy sharing with you, but I hope I give you a good idea how the PowerBloc solves these problems and how we step up and step in for a customer, make sure that they live in the house they want with the security and the reliability of service that they should expect. Thank you so much. We're taking questions now, and I'll see them in my chat window. If that doesn't work, someone will hand me some paper slips. So thanks for your questions. I look forward to answering them. Okay, I'm looking for questions now. I don't know what you need to do. Oh, that's the wrong direction here. Okay, I think they're in the chat window here. Okay, great. So the first question is, what's the size? How do we determine the size of the system? So what we do is we first of all look at the load panel. We work with the electrician. What loads are in the panel? What's the maximum requirement? Because there are some requirements from the authorities having jurisdictions in terms of meeting the load of the house. So the first and foremost thing is to meet the load of the house. That is easy. We got so much power behind our inverters. That's never been a consideration. We can provide typically way more service than the utility can provide, and that is not a concern. The next question is then, what are your goals in terms of how much energy would you like to provide locally from solar? Do you want to have a generator? What's your redundancy requirements? And then we work with the customer and we show them different trade-offs between battery storage, solar array size, to give them the kind of system that meets their goals. So we come back, for example, we had one customer and they said they don't want a generator to run more than 250 hours a year. That's full stop. So we need to find a combination between solar array and storage that meets their goal. And between those things, we work on sizing these systems. All right, I'm open to another question here. I hope this is working. Okay, great. Okay, so there was a question about the price of the PowerBloc. So it depends really on size and also on configuration, but mainly it is the power unit, the base unit, which is the standard PowerBloc that you see here, which we call Gen 3. It's around $90,000 is the base PowerBloc, which gives you 100 ampere service. Let's integrate generators, 20 kilowatt of solar, and everything that you want and need to connect to the PowerBloc. So with that, you can place utility service at 100 amps. So how would the military use the PowerBloc? We know there's interest. We'll be probably speaking with bases here locally in California through one of our electricians soon. Number one, of course, abroad would be advanced forward bases. Even the PowerBloc as is pretty transportable. You saw earlier a picture in Woodland Valley where we had the PowerBloc in a van. That was a 150, whatever, 110 kilowatt hour storage system, 100 amps, all in just one van. So it moves easily and it comes together quickly. And I hope every serviceman will have a Leatherman with an M6 and a hex head. And so we can put that together anywhere in the world. So that is the interest, but then also in general for redundancy, right? For protection at bases, and also they have often spread out, facilities like at training ranges that sometimes run a generator, and they like to take them off the grid. So, okay, space needs for the PowerBloc. They are about 26 something inches wide, 32 inches deep, and 7 feet tall, 87 inches tall, with the vent hood that you see here on the right hand side. There should be 6 inches spaced apart. That's the requirement that we get from the fire departments. And we like to have them 6 inches off the wall for a similar reason, and then 12 inches on the right and left side for conduit to come out. The PowerBloc itself has no conduit between it. So everything is connected through some kind of a plenum, if you like. You see this here in the picture. So there's really no external conduit, whether you have a 2-unit PowerBloc, which we call a base, or you have a 2-cabinet PowerBloc, or you have 8 cabinets. So we lay out the floor, and then the PowerBloc is put on top of those bases. So yes, so there come questions about the 3-foot requirement of the that might come around from energy storage systems. The AHJs adopt this on their own. To date, we have not seen any pushback on the 6-inch, but remember that the PowerBloc is separable, so there's no problem at all to make put 3 feet in between the storage cabinets or any of those cabinets. I will point out though that I'm not aware, and I've done a lot of work and I've asked a lot of people, of a single battery fire using lithium iron phosphate batteries, the chemistry that we are using. In particular, the kind of safety that we've built in, including that all of our breakers can be thrown remotely. The PowerBloc controller has a hard stop where it goes beyond a rapid shutdown and even throws out the breaker, disconnecting every single battery from each other. I think we're beyond safe. We also will include, or the PowerBloc includes, a volatile gas sensor that detects any outgassing of batteries that might indicate a failure, which typically 10 or 30 minutes before any kind of thermal event happens. And I want to point out, for lithium iron phosphate, that's not a flame. That's smoke, maybe getting hot to the touch, swelling. But if you expect a lithium iron phosphate battery to burst into flames, you are talking about the wrong product. You're talking about NMC cells, which are completely different in their propagation of thermal events. So UL certification. So we certify everything to UL, and I believe we have passed every UL certification we have done without any going back in any design. We believe we design way above UL in safety. All the batteries are in process right now as they're being installed of UL 9540A. I think that's the way it's the way it's pronounced. And then we do the whole system UL, and then you can have that in different configurations. So the answer is yes. If I'm answering this correctly, then your question correctly, then you can make any system you want, and UL will cover that combination. There is such a UL certification that allows for that, and that's the one we're pursuing, or the one that we're in progress, I should say. What about the cooling of the system? So yesterday we visited a site which had about 8 or so Fronius inverters running a grid-tied system. It's giving off nice, the same heat off that any inverter gives off. And so what we do is be realistic with our customers. We have a very high power system. This is not a 5 kilowatt backup battery on the wall in the garage. This is a 50 kilowatt or 100 kilowatt or 200 kilowatt system. It is an industrial piece of equipment. So that's why we have these vent hoods, which you see actually on the left here on top. They can be connected to an active exhaust. There's a cutout for that's covered for an oval exhaust. to come out. You also see on the right-hand side, there's an air intake from the front that's always available. We know that people store their skis and their boxes and their beer next to the PowerBloc, so that usually covers some of the intake. So with that, we have that covered. We do require that the PowerBloc is in temperature-controlled spaces. We'll waive that on a one-off basis if we know where the PowerBloc goes. Because remember, temperatures are rising, ambient temperatures to a degree that it meets and exceeds the chemistry that of the batteries that they can operate at. That's what climate change is bringing to some of our regions. Monitoring looks like you have a tablet. You see it actually behind me here if the video works, on the cabinet behind me, which is our Gen 4 system for a mobile system. It gives you full control and insight into PowerBloc. There's also right now a online platform that we monitor, and we check everything that the PowerBloc is active and working properly, and that will be now made available to our customers so they can themselves log in. But usually you can rely on your app to see everything that's going on the PowerBloc. You also have displays on the PowerBloc. You see them here on the left side. They're kind of yellow. I'm going to run my cursor over it. You can see them through the window pane without opening the PowerBloc. You can just walk up. If these screens, they're actually no more yellow, they're now white. But if you walk up and everything is white, and then everything's perfect. If they flip over, invert colors, then you know something's wrong. But the PowerBloc would tell you otherwise, and we would know way ahead of time and let you know. All right. Do you need this much power? Yes, you do. Yes, you do. You can never have enough power, and you can never have enough storage, and you can never have enough solar. The type of battery power systems that are currently being sold as week-long storage or backup from Tesla and Franklin and others are simply untrue. I give an example. If you have a 10 kilowatt-hour storage system that typically is half full because it's cycling solar, so it will be a half full, and then when the outage hits, you have 5 kilowatt hours of storage. And then if there's no sun in 10 hours, your home will have no more power with 500 watts of load, which is just bare minimum load. So therefore, yes, you need that much storage, and we will match it up against the load and against their power requirements. Do we exceed off the power that the whole house probably has? Yes, but that's the only way you can get the AHJ to approve the power system. You need to meet the load that the electrician specifies on the panel. Okay, let's see if there's another question. Otherwise, okay, yes, so no more question. I think we want to get done early ahead of the Christmas season. So the question is, I'm looking here on the right-hand side, can we work with existing homes? The answer is yes. Many of our projects are new construction, but that's not necessarily needed. We can fit this in existing homes. The one I showed you down in Big Sur is an existing house. It's a renovation of a house that's over 30 years old. The only thing I will note is that traditionally homes have not had mechanical rooms that are large enough to fit a PowerBloc. So therefore, we often have to resort to some kind of an external structure, a nice shed somewhere away from the house that stores part of the PowerBloc. Okay, how long does it take from placing an order for the PowerBloc? That's the last question. I think that's ideal. Between getting one, beginning March when we are in full production, right now we're doing pre-production and the first customers, we'll be serving them. But after March, early April, it'll be 90 to 120 days between you placing the order and the PowerBloc being installed at the house. And that's simply because we're a small company. We have a lot of projects already scheduled, but we will rise to the challenge. There's no constraints we really have on inverters or battery systems or manufacturing. So as we see more customers, we'll increase our manufacturing, but it probably will stay at about 90 to 120 days because remember, there's engineering work we need to do. We need to work with the authority having jurisdiction with the fire departments. They don't respond immediately. Thankfully, we don't need to talk to PG&E because that would turn us into a 2-year project, or any other utility for that matter. Don't want to single them out. So yeah, I would say 90 to 120 days is probably realistic between the time you place an order and the time we deliver the PowerBloc and get you online with the PowerBloc. Thank you so much for joining us today. I hope you enjoyed this. Again,